Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Tuesday, August 12th. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you on this episode. We will be joined by Cody Stavenhagen, the Athletics Tigers beat writer. We're going to talk a lot about this Tigers team. What has changed since last year? Could things be different for them this October? And why were they so quiet at the trade deadline? We've got some baseball news you should know to get to. Josh Hader going for imaging right as the Astros just got healthier in the rotation with the return of Cristian Javier. We got an update on Shane McClanahan, and we're going to dig into 3 hitters that we have not talked a lot about on the show this year, even though they're having very good and very interesting seasons along the way. If you have not joined our Discord yet, you can do that with the link in the show description. Be sure to hit the like button in this video if you're watching on YouTube, or leave us a nice rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Let's start with the baseball news you should know. Josh Hader did not enter the game on Monday for a save opportunity against the Red Sox because of shoulder soreness. He has been sent for imaging, and the result of those tests is not known at the time of this recording. So we're in the day-to-day for now bucket as it goes with Hader. Interestingly, though, he last pitched Friday and threw 36 pitches, and in his absence on Monday, Bennett Sousa got the save, his 4th of the season. But the reason was Brian Abreu had pitched 2 of the last 3 games, and one of those was 1 2/3 against the Yankees on Sunday. So it sounds like, based on comments that Joe Espada made, if Josh Hader is unavailable for any prolonged stretch, Brian Abreu is pretty clearly the next in line to close out games for the Astros.
Yeah, and I would assume that maybe Brian King is the setup man in front of him. I really like Brian Abreu, and I think that he can handle this, and I think he can be a closer. So you don't lose as much in the first seat, but I think everybody moving up a seat, you do start to lose something. Brian King is an interesting guy that does it more on command than stuff. Sousa's been all right. There's some okay pieces there. Everyone's just a little bit worse if they take a step to the left, and get closer to the 9th inning. So, this will hurt them on some level. I don't know if it is going to sink them. It's baseball. It's really hard to one player to sink you, but it would be really bad news if Hader was hurt.
If we do get some information, though, that Hader's going to miss at least a brief stretch on the IL or possibly more time, do you look at Abreu with the skills he's shown to this point in his career as like a tier 1 closer? I was just talking to our friends, Blake Murphy and Julia Croix in Toronto, about how it's hard to get saves this late because a lot of the saves that come available come in the form of committees. You don't necessarily get a clear, this is the new closer sort of answer this time of year. But for me, maybe Brian Abreu is kind of like a Randy Rodriguez level, like plug and play, be really excited about what you get from him sort of closer.
I mean, the only caveat is it's extremely poor command. It's really bottom shelf command. But we've talked about different reasons why that can play in the 9th inning. You are given a clean inning most of the time is one of the best reasons. So can you walk 2 guys and strike out 3? Yes, Brian Abreu can do that. So I think he'll be fine. I think he absolutely is ahead of guys like Jojo Romero, Calvin Fauché and the whole Florida crew. I think I would have him ahead of Jose Ferrer. Jose Ferrer is interesting. I was watching his relief outing the other day against the Giants, and I like him. The model likes him, but it's a sinker from a lefty. He does not necessarily have the stuff to like throw a high fastball past somebody who, needs that, So I don't know about Jose Ferrer long term. I'm interested to see. In short term, it's a pretty bad pen, and I think he's just the only guy that has the velo and has the stuff to be a closer. But Abreu is clear of all those guys.
Yeah, I like Brian Abreu. Even with that command flaw that you described, I think we're still talking about an impact closer if he gets the opportunity. Let's talk about the Astros rotation for a moment, because Cristian Javier was back. He pitched well in that first turn against the Red Sox. 5 innings, 2 earned, 3 hits, 5 Ks, 2 walks. And I think the big story here is that he continued to use the changeup at an elevated clip. That was something we saw in 2024 before he got hurt. But he also added a new sinker. So now you're talking about a guy that might have 4 or 5 viable pitches in the mix. And when Cristian Javier broke in a few years ago, it was really a fastball sweeper heavy combo. It was like 85% 2 pitches and a little bit of long tail stuff with the change in the curve at the time. But I don't know. I look at Javier now and I think if the command is good, then he could actually end up being a really nice pickup down the stretch. I think this was almost like a better than expected development. It was something he added while working and rehabbing at the Cressy facility in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes surgery fixes something that had been bothering you. Like if you think about it, look at his velo. Cristian Javier, 2022, 93.8 on the fastball. In 2023, 92.7. I remember being like, 2024, 91.7. Like that's what is going on? Like that's pretty aggressive for any kind of velo aging curve. And now he's back to 93.5 where he was in 2022. So velo wise, he's just a step behind the best he's ever been. And Cristian Javier now has the widest pitch mix he's ever had. Now, I think that can put some pressure on poor natural command. If you can look at his location plus numbers, he's had some 94s, but he's also for his career 100 location plus. So if the command concerns are a little bit overblown, I think he's a great pickup. And I'd been holding on to some Luis Garcia shares and draft and holds when he was super cheap, and I thought Luis Garcia was going to make it back before Cristian Javier, so I thought there was going to be more bulk there. But it seems like Cristian Javier is the Astro to pick up coming off of injury, and he went 5 innings. Maybe he'll only go 5, and maybe he won't be a great source of wins. But the strikeouts have always been, have pretty much always been there, except for last year when he was ostensibly on his way to being hurt. And I like this mix.
Colton Gordon was the starter, bumped off the roster with the return of Cristian Javier. So now you got Javier back. Spencer Arrighetti came back recently. Hunter Brown, Framber Valdez up top. Eventually Jason Alexander maybe gets bumped out of that mix too. It's looking like a more October-friendly sort of rotation for the Astros as the pieces come back together. That 1-2 was already good enough with Framber and Brown doing what they've been able to do over the past couple of seasons together. I saw a note here. Cole Reagans is actually going to throw a bullpen session on Tuesday. So good news. His first bullpen session since going on the IL with that rotator cuff strain. But just thinking about the timetable, at the time when he moved to the 60-day IL, he seemed like an easy sort of drop in the non-IL leagues, like the NFBC leagues we play in. I'm wondering when you'd start to stash someone like Reagans on your roster, even if you're only hoping for maybe 3 or 4 big league starts in the second half of September, which might just be more in the, I want to show that I'm healthy and go into the offseason focusing on getting better as opposed to focusing on working back from this injury.
I think a bullpen doesn't quite move the needle for me because he could throw the bullpen and say, well, that didn't feel good, and bullpen is not, it's not a rehab start.
So you want the first rehab start before you start stashing. You want the first rehab start, and you want to get the report that it was okay, like the day or two after.
I think so, but even if if you're, it sometimes it depends on like when it hits, right? Like, oh well, we have Fab on Sunday, and the rehab starts Monday. Might be worth $1. You throw $1 down, and he has the rehab stint. They say everything went well. He might have one more rehab stint, and he's up. Then you win. Then you did well. It's all a question of like timing and price, but yeah, I would love to have one rehab stint done. They said it was good. They said he might have 1 or 2 more, and my Sunday comes around and I get him for $1 or $2. Yeah, I would like that. I think that's worth it. I've pulled that off in a couple places. Sean Manaea and Luis Heel, I have on some pretty big leagues that I need them, and I paid like $4 combined for them.
Yeah, it's especially when it's not like a TJ sort of return. I feel pretty good about getting out in front of guys coming off the IL and maybe getting a nice bump in the rotation at the end of the season. So worth it if you can time it right. It's not always easy to do. Did have an update here from the Rays. Shane McClanahan had season-ending surgery. You were looking at the details of this procedure. The issue that put him on the IL to begin the year was a nerve issue in the triceps. And you don't hear a lot about those, and nerve surgeries in particular seem very, let's say, highly variable in terms of what you're going to get as far as a result.
Yeah, and this one in particular had some really kind of gruesome descriptions that I was like, oh my goodness. Well, first of all, Kevin Cash says the doctor is not sitting there saying he's fixed. That's not the case. That's okay, good. And so I went in a little bit further and read some of Mark Topkin's piece, and it's a radial nerve decompression where they cut the pronator muscle to give the nerve space. That sounds gruesome. There are also some other quotes about like, well, like we're all learning right now, and like we're just trying to figure this out, and like this is kind of new for the baseball community. Are things that people are saying about this Shane McClanahan surgery. But I do remember Mark Melancon had a radial nerve decompression. Well, this is what Shane McClanahan had: radial nerve decompression. It addresses chronic forearm pain by splitting the supinator muscle. Mark Melancon had pronator release surgery, where they cut the fascia. So maybe they don't cut the entire muscle, but they cut the fascia in order to release the pronator muscle and give his nerve more space. There's this thing that happens where, athletes get big and the muscles actually get so big that they compress the nerve. And so this sort of decompression surgery is not necessarily, it sounds gruesome. And I wouldn't want to be in the room to watch it. I'm like one of those like,
I don't think I need to watch any surgeries actually. Like I think
I don't like. I had a cousin once that was like used to like to watch those, and I'm like, what? Anyway, it makes me get all gross. But this is there is precedent for like cutting muscles in order to like give nerves space to roam. I will mention that Mark Melancon had that surgery in 2017, and he did have some good years after that, but he never quite returned to the same velo. And just putting together all the things that they're saying and how long it's been since Shane McClanahan's been on the mound and all of this, I just think you have to be a little bit pessimistic about his future, and you just have to hope for him that it's on the better end of outcomes.
Yeah, we'd love to see Shane McClanahan back again. Last we saw him for the Rays, 2023, 3.29 ERA, 118 WHIP, 121 Ks. That year for his career, 456 strikeouts and 404 and 2/3 big league innings. So a difference maker if we can get Shane McClanahan back. It just looks like a bit of an unknown period right now as they see how this procedure turns out for him. If it provides the relief he needs to get back into the rehab swing of things at some point here in the coming months. Let's get to a new segment that I created this morning called the Checklist. Yeah, I created it this morning. It doesn't matter when I made it. I'm just being honest. Sometimes you have a good idea as you're kind of putting a show together, or what you think is a good idea, so you make it. And we're going to call it the Checklist because I got thinking about this idea that we go this whole season, and the player pool is so big. Some guys play really well all year and barely get mentioned on the show. It's not because of any sort of like reason. It's just the nature of they weren't in the news and they weren't really in a lot of job battles for a while or whatever. Like they just kind of slipped through the cracks. So the checklist, go through, make sure you talk about everybody, right? So they were terrible baseball cards to open back in the day. Felt like an absolute ripoff.
Oh, God, you're really...
15 cards in the pack, one's a checklist. You're like, oh, come on. Like what? Why were they printing those? Really? What? Whose idea was that? I want to know who invented the checklist for baseball cards. I want them to apologize to everybody. It shouldn't have counted as one of the cards in the pack. But Ben Rice is the first player on the checklist for today. It's been a while since we've mentioned his name on the show. And the reason I want to talk about him is because his playing time behind the plate has gone up as the Yankees roster logjam has played out in recent weeks. The return of Giancarlo Stanton from the IL and how that kind of clogs up the DH spot, and Aaron Judge going on the IL and coming back. It's left the Yankees in a position where they've had to put Ben Rice behind the plate more. In Chris Kirshner's story that went up on The Athletic today, the reports are really good. It's been working. Ben Rice is starting to eat into the playing time of Austin Wells a little bit. And as a hitter, Ben Rice is doing the things that people were hoping for coming into the season, right? The K rate's down from 27% last year to 19.4%. He's still hitting the ball very hard, 54.5% hard hit rate, 16.1% barrel rate. Those numbers are somehow cranking out a 249 BABIP, which seems a hair low. I think you could look at Ben Rice and think that might be an unlucky slash line with the 235, 326, 463 he's putting up right now. So there's power, and we're getting good reports about his defense behind the plate. So what do you think that means for Rice in the short term, and perhaps even in the long term as well, as he tries to go through this ongoing battle with Austin Wells?
I want to read you some names that are comps for Ben Rice. I used max EV, barrel rate, and strikeout rate. Very simple comp list. And everybody with a max EV over 111. So I was generous because Ben Rice has a 113.5. So I was generous on the max EV. With the barrel rate, Rice has a 16%. I used everybody over 13%, so fairly generous there too. And then I just sorted it and said who has a better than average strikeout rate along with those traits. And the names are Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Ketel Marte, Manny Machado, George Springer, Juan Soto, Ben Rice, Salvador Perez, Corey Seager, Brent Rooker, Pete Alonso. And okay. I think Matt Olson sneaks right under the wire there, but there's not a clunker in there, man. Ben Rice, and obviously he has the lowest BABIP of anybody on here. The closest is Juan Soto's 260. Ben Rice got a 249. So and then Juan Soto has a bit of more of an oppo situation going. I think Ben Rice, there's no warning sign for why his BABIP should be low, although the projections all say like a 260 BABIP, so they see there's some signal in there. I think those are low. I think he can hit like 260, 270. I don't get what they're looking at for him, but maybe he pulls the ball a lot. Maybe he's easy to defend as a lefty who pulls the ball a lot. In any case, those names are really good, and the real reason you want Ben Rice is that since Aaron Judge has come off of the DL, the IL they call it now, and since Aaron Judge has played every day at DH, Ben Rice has played every day. Catcher, first base, and Giancarlo Stanton, who they're writing stories about how he's trying his best out in the outfield. He's played twice in the outfield since Judge has come back. And the sort of not as exciting, not as fun side piece to this is that Paul Goldschmidt is increasingly becoming a bench bat for his Yankee team. He has played 4 times in the last 8 days, twice against lefties. So I kind of think Goldschmidt is a bit of a dropper in all leagues. I've been dropping him in a couple places already. And I think Ben Rice is a pickup in all leagues. And I don't know if you have the chance, but if you have the chance to acquire him, I think he's the type of guy that I might put together a package of win now items for. I think there's nothing like Ben Rice does everything I want a hitter to do.
I think the other thing that's great is that because he's catching a lot suddenly, he's going to qualify as a catcher everywhere next year. Like he's going to get to that 20 game threshold with his next game played behind the plate this year. So
yeah,
he's going to retain catcher eligibility, and Goldschmidt is on a 1-year deal anyway. They're already playing him less. So
he's either the first baseman or the catcher next year for them.
Yeah, there should be less of a logjam theoretically. Because I mean, are they going to go out and are the Yankees going to go in and get Pete Alonso if Alonso is back on the market? Like I don't know. I guess anything's possible. Mm-hmm. But even if the defense has improved enough for Rice to play ahead of Wells or to take time away from Wells right now, then you have that path to an increased role next year as well. And then, of course, the track record health-wise for Giancarlo Stanton is such that we don't expect him to stay healthy for a full 162. So there will be some stretches where DH is available. So I think it would take a pretty unlikely event in the form of a massive first base addition this offseason for the playing time to get really murky for Ben Rice again going the next season.
Ben Rice is doing so much. Like, as an organization, are you itching to get him off the field?
Do not spend your resources that way. Use them on something else. I think of all the names you mentioned comps-wise, like some of those guys are early rounders, like proven stars. The Brent Rooker comp probably makes the most sense to me, just in terms of a guy that has like a bit of a late breakout, but still has that upper end sort of outcome. Like if you're getting a Brent Rooker behind the plate fantasy-wise right now, like that's pretty exciting. And it can even take 20-30% off of what Rooker's doing. And that's still a really, really good catcher. So I think there's a lot of things kind of going right here for Ben Rice. Your Goldschmidt call as far as dropping him, at least in shallow leagues, 10, 12-team leagues, maybe 15s. Are you cutting Paul Goldschmidt in 15-team leagues right now too? With the share dipping enough?
Like, the right-handers are really interesting when it comes to projecting playing time, and it comes before the season. A right-hander versus a left-hander, you might prefer the right-hander, right? Because you're like, oh, that guy will play every day, like before the season. But when you start to see this sort of usage, then it just becomes the bottom is, there is no bottom. You know what I mean? Like, what if they only use him against lefties and occasionally against righties? That could be 2 or 3 times a week. That's what it's been. That's not good. That's not useful in any league. Like, you can't even keep that around in daily leagues to be like, oh, I'll just use him against lefties.
I was thinking about the other side of the catching situation too. Austin Wells, like, what does his future look like?
I like Wells, and he gets really good remarks defensively. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if Ben Rice was the first baseman next year.
So you could actually target both of these guys right now, as odd as that seems. Because there's a world in which they both play a lot. Be a little aggressive, but if you can't get Ben Rice and you're in a deep two-catcher league, I don't think what we're seeing from Austin Wells at the plate right now is necessarily going to be the long-term outcome. He is chasing more. Hard hit rate's still there. Barrel rate's still there. We still like the park. Still popped 15 homers and 345 plate appearances this year, so all is not lost. And you do generally take a little bit of an average hit at the catcher spot anyway. So if you're going to take that, better there than somewhere else where you have someone that might get you 500 or 600 plate appearances. So I'm looking at this and thinking about both as potential buy lows, but they're not both buy lows. Wells is a buy low and Rice is a guy that I want for next year. And kind of buy high Rice because the future looks like it could actually be even brighter than we once thought for Ben Rice. 2 other players I want to get to here. Bo Bichette, are you buying the 2025 rebound? He is snapped all the way back to number 31 among hitters in the Fangraphs player rater this season. It's a big part of what the Jays are doing right on the offensive side. A lot of things clicking, but Bo Bichette getting maybe a little less attention than George Springer's renaissance year. Bichette's hitting 298, the 338 OBP, 470 slug. These numbers look exactly like what he was doing in 2022 and 2023 as far as the slash line goes, and he's doing it with a career best 15% K rate.
I like, in terms of what he will do the rest of the season, I think he's doing fine. There's just still something that leaves me cold about his approach long term. He still, really just goes oppo and chases everything. And that chase is going to turn into more strikeouts rather than fewer soon. I don't know if this is the year to sell him, because people might still remember last year. But I think the time to sell Bo Bichette in dynasty leagues is fast approaching us. If it's and you could make the case it could be now, because he doesn't add anything with the legs. His OBP is lower than you might expect given how good he is at everything else. And so what you probably are going to get pretty soon is a 280 hitter with a 320 OBP and like a 420 slugging. I don't think that's too far off. And that kind of a player is a 280 hitter with 15 homers and 5 stolen bases. I mean, it's not. I don't think we're getting anything like 2021 where he had 298 with 29 homers and 25 stolen bases, like with all those runs in RBI. Like I don't think we're ever getting anything like that again. So
yeah,
it's good, but the kind of fundamental flaws in his game are still there, and those may not hit until 30. So, and he's 27 now. But in this next couple of years is the time to sell, if not now. Depends on sort of how you see your team going and in terms of dynasty and stuff like that. Where do I rank him next year? I may end up with him like 1 slot or 2 slots below where consensus is. There may be another shortstop that I like better than him.
Probably some leagues where you get him if he slips, but generally not someone that's going to end up on a lot of your teams that will be the rebound price. Won't go all the way back up to second, third round levels because the bags haven't been there. I think the question about him for free agent purposes too is his deal's up at the end of the year and he's going to hit the market.
Yeah, will he be a shortstop? How much longer will he be a shortstop?
I don't think he's a shortstop after this season. If a team's really smart about it, he's a -9 for defensive runs saved. Only Carlos Correa has been worse with a -11. Outs above average agrees. -7 is as bad as just about anybody that qualifies other than CJ Abrams.
And it's not a 1-year deal for outs above average.
Right.
He's -26 for his career.
Yeah. Bo Bichette is not a shortstop on a multi-year deal. You're going to have to look at him as a second baseman or, I mean, where else could you play him? Probably just second base.
Yeah, second base.
That's about it. So that's his market will be very interesting to watch over the course of this winter. One more name to throw at you. Geraldo Perdomo, a top 25 hitter in 2025? What happened? How did this happen?
That's one of your best calls of all time, dude.
If it was that good of a call, though, I would have him all over the place. I was a year early. Like I feel like I was a year early because I thought last year he could do a little bit more. And I think Rocchio was my next Geraldo Perdomo, and that's been a bad call. So bringing myself back down.
I mean, putting those two together gives you the sort of, the range of outcomes for a player like this, where you're like, hey, controls the plate well, makes good contact, good defensively. What happens when he fills out? What happens when he gets all this playing time? I guess Rocchio is not a switch hitter. He is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, really, not to take anything away from your call. It was a good call. But, you made the underground, the sort of the working, the reason you came up with the Perdomo call is also the reason that you might have liked Rocchio, and it can go either way. Right. And Perdomo went the right way, which is to keep improving his contact and just making the most of his power. Like, he doesn't have great bat speed, but he's hitting a few more fly balls and he's taking shots and he's hitting some barrels. What do I think of him long term? I think he could easily slip back to single digit homers next year. And I don't know that he's a guarantee for 20 stolen bases in a year. So, he could play all year next year and hit 260 with 9 homers and 15 stolen bases.
Yeah, I think the speed would be the one thing that could keep him from completely cratering value-wise next year. 17 for 21. He's been very efficient. He's always done a good job getting on base. 385 is a career best, but 344 and 353 the last 2 seasons. He was a solid real-life player, even though there wasn't a lot of fantasy goodness in the profile before. And he stole 16 back in 2023. He was 16 for 20 that year, so maybe the downturn was the missed time and the injuries a year ago that kept him from staying in that clear like mid-teen sort of range. So maybe if he hits fewer homers, he gets above 25 steals for the first time, something like that. If you treat him more like the Andres Jimenez type players, the Bryson Stotts, that's probably the right sort of tier to put Perdomo in coming off of a year like this. But even as someone who liked him, I did not think this outcome was actually possible for him.
Yeah, with 6th percentile bat speed, I don't and like a 5% barrel rate. Like I think this is the most you can expect from him power wise. So I wouldn't go projecting more power for him going forward. But he is under contract till 2029, and the defensive numbers are still fairly solid. So I think he's their shortstop for 4 years.
They extended him for a reason, and that was with Jordan Lawler in the organization. So it tells you how they feel about Perdomo defensively and how they value him.
And where they've been playing Lawler, it's not like they've been continuing to play Lawler at short and, we might just move Perdomo to third. No, they've been playing Lawler all over the diamond and Perdomo just staying at short.
Now it is our pleasure to be joined by our Tigers beat writer, Cody Stavenhagen joins the show. Cody, thank you so much for making some time for us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be on.
So the Tigers are in an interesting position right now, still holding a 6-game lead over the Guardians. It feels safe-ish, I would say, right now. It's not the runaway that it looked like it was going to be even a month or so ago. But what has been the pain point for the Tigers? They've had this stretch where they were 25 games over 500 on July 8th. Now they're just 18 over 500 entering play here on Tuesday.
I think a lot of things have gone wrong, and maybe that's the most concerning thing. It's not just one element of the team that has struggled. There was a period just a couple weeks ago, they had lost 12 of 13 games, and they weren't hitting well, they weren't pitching well, they weren't fielding well. Their identity of being aggressive on the base paths wasn't a thing because no one was on the bases. Things have picked up a little bit since then, but let's just break it down. Post All-Star break, the Tigers have the lowest walk rate of any team in baseball. I believe they have the second highest strikeout rate. That's generally not a good recipe. That's something the Tigers in recent years have really tried to stress, dominating the strike zone. They haven't actually built a roster that dominates the strike zone that well, and certainly their hitters have not done that since the All-Star break. And the bigger problem really has been the pitching. This is a bullpen that's been one of the worst in the league dating back to June 1st that has, I think, the second lowest whiff rate from relievers in all of baseball. That's not a great recipe for success. It's been a pretty good rotation, but it hasn't been a great rotation lately. You have Tarek Skubal and then kind of a bunch of question marks. They traded and added Charlie Morton and Chris Paddock, gives them a little more depth. The results there have been mixed so far. I think they're hoping to find stability kind of on all these fronts, but it hasn't been just one thing that has led to kind of this huge decline in their AL Central lead.
Yeah, I noticed a weird thing that over the last month, they've given up the third most homers of any staff. And so I went over and I looked at the monthly park factors that there was a piece on Fangraphs. It's called the Park Factors Are in the Pudding or something. I don't know why it's called that, but July is the most hitter friendly that Comerica ever is, And then I was surprised to see that June is the most hitter friendly that Progressive Field ever is. And that August is the most hitter friendly that Kauffman ever is. So there's this weird divisional thing where these parks are playing more hitter friendly. What do you think of Comerica generally? I mean, it's a pitcher's park, but there are weird aspects to it, right?
Yeah, it's not as much of a pitcher's park as people think, just based on dimensions. Like the run scoring environment, correct me if I'm wrong, tends to be league average, if not a little bit above, because it has huge gaps. Great park for doubles, triples. You can score runs there. It's generally not a good park for homers, and I'm glad you brought this up. It's playing way differently this year. This is the most favorable Comerica Park has been for home run hitters since, I believe, 2016. There are only a few years in the park's 25-year history where it's played above league average for homers. So there's home runs from both the home team and the away team. It's been way over that. I think it's the 8th best park for home run hitters this season. It's higher than Great American Ballpark. I have no explanation for that. I don't know if that's just some weird guys have rolled in there and had good games. Is it that simple? Or is there something else environmentally going on? I have no idea how to answer that question, but it has been a really interesting quirk that we've seen in Detroit, certainly in July, but really all season.
Yeah, it is pretty strange. We've seen some odd park factors all over. I think at the other end, the ballpark in Arlington has been very pitcher friendly. The home road splits for their pitchers are just crazy this year. I think in Detroit, Cleveland, Kansas City, Milwaukee, it's a little climate controlled because they got the roof, but It's been hot. It's been humid all summer. It's been like extremely hitter friendly conditions in the summer months this year too. And I think that's maybe made things play a certain way in some of those environments. You mentioned some of the factors. It's a little bit of everything really has gone wrong. Riley Greene has a stretch where he's had a 37% K rate over the last 30 days, a 1% walk rate. I mean, this is remarkably bad plate discipline for a month-long stretch. And what's going on with Riley Greene right now? Is there anything mechanically that you see that just looks a little bit off? Or how do you explain his recent struggles?
Yeah, Riley Greene has had a perplexing season because he has periods where he is really good, one of the best hitters in the American League, and he has had some droughts where he looks completely lost, and they've been, 2-week to month-long droughts. This latest he's coming out of the last few games, but it was getting really rough. You mentioned the strikeout rate. He has the steepest swing in the major leagues. That probably explains a lot of it, but it's not unfathomable that he could set a single season record for most strikeouts. I believe that record is Mark Reynolds with 223. Greene is on pace for around 212-ish strikeouts. If he continues at that 37% clip he's been for about the last month, he would probably blow past the Mark Reynolds record. He's getting killed on high fastballs, and he's been seeing a lot more fastballs, especially early in August, almost like 70% fastballs. I think that has a lot to do with it. Pitchers are seeing the steep swing, and they're saying, we're just going to beat you with upper rail fastballs. He says he's trying to stay on those, but then he's chasing a lot of spin, below the zone, a lot of chase. So kind of a classic getting caught in between those two things. I think for Riley Greene, the solution is to stop the chase. That's what will really get you in trouble. He has a swing built that he's going to whiff. He's going to whiff a lot. He's also going to do a lot of damage. You can live with that. I don't think you can live with the elevated chase rate and with really just being caught in between, kind of coming out of his approach. I think he's pressing there for a little bit. The last couple games have been better, so we'll see what happens. He's still having a great season, still has a great OPS, 27 homers, so make of that what you will. It's just kind of frustrating because this guy could be so good, but there are a couple flaws that are really holding him back. The walk rate has dropped off huge this year. He's still only 24 years old. It's been kind of a puzzle all year, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who is 1,900 plate appearances into his career. I don't think this is the first time that pitchers have decided to attack him with those high fastballs, right? They've known he's had steep swings for a while. So I think I agree with your assessment that he's sort of just pressing. He's stuck in a little bit of he's domed up, as Colt Keith told me last year. He's domed up. You know what? Another thing is that I just sort of, this might be a little bit opinion, but I don't think that. I think that your chase rate, like your eye at the plate, is one of the hardest things to change year to year. I think It's almost kind of immutable. So if he's got a demonstrated track record of basically a 28% chase percentage, and now he's at 33, 35, even higher in the last month, that just screams to me slump, not oh, they figured him out. He's been too good for too long for this to be just the time that they figured him out. So I do think it's interesting that he's got such a steep swing. What does he say when you ask him about that?
It's interesting going back to when Riley Greene was a highly touted prospect. Or when he was drafted, the thought was he might be a little bit more average over power. The question was how much power is he 15 to 20 homers? Is he 30 homers? Is he more? No one really knew. He really filled out. He really grew into his frame. I remember when he was in AA, I started being there's a little more swing and miss than people are talking about. But I never would have guessed this would be his hitting profile, this extreme. He can still hit for average, but the extreme number of strikeouts, and he's really achieved maybe kind of the best version of his power ceiling. I think Riley goes up there looking to do damage, but he doesn't really talk like a hitter that's this is the trade-off. He doesn't enjoy striking out. He hasn't gone deep into the process of how his swing gradually ticked upward. Go back, look at his rookie year. Launch angle was really low. He's hitting a ton of ground balls. I think that's the origin for this. Really trying to elevate the ball, get it in the air, because
Yes,
he
he's
struggled
told me
with
that the same. Yeah,
early in
he's
his
trying to
career.
get it up in the air. Yeah,
And it's kind of become this huge overcorrection where it's like, well, this is a swing that produces damage, but can we find a happy medium here?
Yeah, and maybe we'll see adjustments as he ages. Eventually the higher K rate will be a problem. If the chase continues to rise as he ages, he'll have to make some adjustments, go back to something that he did that he got into the big leagues. It's one of those things. We don't, with all that bat data, like how flexible our hitters going to be. We'll probably see some interesting fluctuations over time. This is a lineup that has pretty good depth, despite the recent struggles, right? They got 8 regulars that have a WRC plus of 100 or better. So there's no easy path through it. We saw the mixing and matching throughout the second half last year and into the postseason. And the rebound this year from Spencer Torkelson, I think, has been one of the best stories, really. It's kind of been lost a little bit. And it was a red hot start. And he's kind of just leveled off and played like a regular good first baseman instead of like an MVP candidate. But what do you think has helped Torque get back to being the player he was about like 2 years ago?
Yeah, another fascinating one. We could talk about the small adjustments he made, changed up his stance, narrowed up, stands a little taller, has a little bit different posture. Tigers think that's just made him more flexible, more adjustable. He can cover the whole plate instead of like his swing last year it was like kind of this merry-go-round, and it was only covering certain pitches. That has a lot to do with it, the adjustments he's made there. But I think it's totally a mental thing. I mean, this is a guy who you could see get really deep in his own head, could be kind of inflexible to change or then change his approach too much. He just looks relaxed. He looks like he's being himself. There's no great explanation beyond that. The thing that's been most impressive to me is, yes, he has leveled off from that incredible start. He's had even some slumps or periods where, he's 5 for 30 or whatever it may be. He's come out of that. He's maintained power production. The batted ball data has been good all year long. It's been really solid level performance pretty much all season. He's gone through some droughts. He's come out of them. It hasn't killed him like it would in the past. That all leads us to what's been a really good first baseman with middle of the order power.
Yeah, I'd kind of in my head been like, oh, he went into a slump. Here we go again, and I'd kind of written him off. But I'm looking at his last 30, and he's back to a 272 average, 467 slugging. Above average, even for a first baseman. And yeah, just to put some numbers on what you're talking about on his batting stance stuff, it's pretty remarkable. I haven't seen this much change on a page, I think, in a while. He went from 32 degree tilt to 38. So, that's a big difference. 32 is on the flatter side and 38 is on the steeper side. I mean, he just sort of went around the average there. That I don't think I've seen as big a change in tilt, on the page. He went from 3 degrees open to 17 degrees open. So he's way more open now. And then, he 10 inches less distance between his feet. So that means he's standing up more upright. All the things that you mentioned, they're just popping off the page. But the nice thing I think that you start with is good bat speed, like above average bat speed. Now they're putting him in a position to sort of take advantage of that. And like generally, I think a good sense of where the strike zone is. So this allows him to, I think, play the power to play the best and like fit into his other strengths. So do you feel like pretty good about this kind of continuing on into the near future, right? Like this is sort of, he's kind of figured it out to some degree.
Yeah, I think the volatility and just his history will always worry me a little bit. But like I said, it was good to see him rebound from the couple droughts he had. Like you said, it's like, okay, no, it's not going to crater into the earth. Most of his metrics have been favorable that and suggest like he's going to continue to have success. I think at least for this year, I'm kind of counting on Torkelson to continue being a strong producer.
Yeah, one thing we noticed when we were getting ready for trade deadline talk was the Tigers' balance in their lineup made it difficult to see an easy upgrade for them on the position player side. Now, you and I were talking before we started recording. I think you can pretty comfortably say it was an underwhelming deadline, even though they added Chris Paddock and Charlie Morton to the rotation added 4 relievers, one of whom we haven't seen yet, right? I think Paul Sewald's still hurt, but Kyle Finnegan, Cody Hoyer, Rafael Montero. The Tigers seem like a team that should have been in on the elite of the elite relievers, and even beyond having the top 2 prospects in baseball, according to the Keith Law's updated list, they had prospects to move. Like, they had talent that other teams wanted. So what do you make of them choosing not to push more chips in, given where they're at as a franchise right now?
Yeah, it was certainly a choice. And I'll talk about the bullpen specifically, because that was the one area that there was a pretty glaring need. Like 28th, 29th in whiff rate. That's just doesn't make you feel good. That doesn't make you comfortable going into a volatile postseason atmosphere when there's going to be a lot of balls in play in the late innings. In addition to guys like Tommy Kahnle, who had a really good first half and have really tapered off lately, like they needed help. And they took an interesting approach. Now that we're a few days removed from like the instant emotional reaction, it's maybe a little easier to see what they were thinking. It was clearly a quantity over quality type thing. They got Kyle Finnegan, who has been a big league closer and is a good pitcher. Doesn't really help their mission to miss a lot more bats, but he's a solid addition, right? You'd feel pretty good if you got Kyle Finnegan and Ryan Helsley, right? That'd be great. Instead, they got Kyle Finnegan and Rafael Montero and Cody Hoyer and Paul Sewald, and it's like, okay, Montero hasn't been great this year, hasn't been good since coming to Detroit. Hoyer was kind of a lottery ticket, started in AAA. They've already brought him up. Sewald, like he's gonna hopefully he can't come off the IL until September 10th at the earliest.
Jeez.
But I think the Tigers were clearly thinking, let's try to fix one guy and let's hope Sewald gets healthy and can help us when this really matters late September and into October. And let's give up next to nothing versus parting with part of their future for an elite closer. I don't think they were ever going to be comfortable
doing
like something like
elite closer,
for a rental, for a Duran, or even Bednar had team control, but then the price tag's high. Like, right or wrong, this is a team that really covets its prospects, that is really staunch, I think, in its models. Wasn't going to go against that. If you talk to people around the league, didn't seem to have, they were just guys they weren't going to part with. And we'll see where that gets them. They don't view this as a window. Scott Harris believes windows are an illusion, he said, with 1 year left of Tarek Skubal. This could be the Tigers' best chance at a World Series, or everyone in the farm will pan out like always happens, right? And they'll be a dynasty for the next 6 years. I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. I think it would have made sense for them to get a top-end reliever in addition to a Kyle Finnegan, and then you can feel really good about the other things you have.
As good as their prospect depth is, like, is there another Skubal in
there? Probably not. Probably not.
I don't know. Like they're 27th in stuff plus as a reliever crew on the season, 28th in strikeout rate. Like, yeah, it seems like that was a missed opportunity. Although, I guess to some extent, some of those starters may become relievers in the playoffs for them.
Yeah, and Troy Melton, rookie, started his first couple outings. He's now in the pen, so they think kind of through adding Charlie Morton, you upgrade your pin by putting Melton in there. Melton's a rookie, so that's kind of a lot of pressure, but he is really good. He has stuff that can play well in the pin. I don't know what their postseason rotation is going to look like. Beyond Skubal beats me, right? They have some guys who have been good, but have been really up and down, and Casey Mize, Jack Flaherty. So we'll see.
Yeah, Flaherty in particular has been a long discussed player on this show, just because he lives right on the threshold of fastball velocity, where he dips into that like 91, 92 range, he gets smacked. He gets up above that, he's usually fine. And I know they've changed up his arsenal a little bit last year, especially after the trade to the Dodgers. So he has a little bit more to work with now than he did during his time in St. Louis. But I mean, if you had to choose after Skubal, if you're facing elimination and you had everybody available to choose from to start that elimination game, who is that guy? Is it clearly Flaherty?
I don't think it's clearly Flaherty. I think Reese Olson's out for the year. Would have been Reese Olson at his best is really good. Casey Mize at his best is really good. His splitter has already kind of trailed off recently, and that plays a huge role in his performance.
In terms of velo, because he was throwing it so hard. Is he throwing it
I don't think he's been
recently?
throwing it as hard, not getting the same level of whiff. Fastball command, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. That's a long way of saying I don't think it's Flaherty like a slam dunk, but I'm not sure there's a clear number 2 either. So maybe it is, I mean, maybe that they're kind of counting on just rolling with a return to pitching chaos in the postseason. Maybe they're completely comfortable with that. I don't know. Because I thought there was also a case like I don't know what it would have cost you to get Edward Cabrera or someone like who could be a real upgrade and maybe with team control. So maybe you feel a little bit better. I was like, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to get a guy you feel confident starting a playoff game, because right now it's Scooble and then you're throwing your hands up in the air. Hope one of these guys has a good day.
The monthly splits for Flaherty are amazing. 3.30 ERA in March, 4.60 in May, 6.80 in June, back to a 3.50 in July, 5 in August. I mean, that is a roller coaster. I guess if I was running this team, I think the idea would be that Paddock and Morton are the bridge. Maybe Gibson Long matters, maybe Alex Cobb matters. I saw that you wrote a piece about him coming back.
Yeah. They have Jose Urquidy, who they're hoping can come back. No one's heard that name in like 3 years, but yeah.
Jeez. But if you assemble enough, number 5 starters, you can turn them probably into number 3 starters by asking them to just air it out for 2 or 3 innings, I guess. And we've always wondered what Paddock would look like. Paddock has looked a lot better, when he's been in short stints. So, I guess the plan is, chaos again. It's worked, I guess. It did seem to kind of fizzle out the last time, right? Like it just kind of, I don't know if maybe things could have gone differently in that last series. Maybe it was really that close, but it also felt like, can you do this all the way through, to the end, to the World Series, to win the World Series?
Yeah.
Like this?
I think that was a big question. I think it can totally work in a 5-game series. They were 7 outs away from advancing in game 4, which was a pitching chaos game, and one bad home run ball ended that. And then they lost a Scooble start in game 5.
Right.
It could work in a 5-game
so that was
series.
that was pretty close, but yeah, 7-game series. Now you're
7-game series, and I'm way less confident there.
Yeah, because then you're just really you have days back-to-back days and back-to-back-to-back days, and like, what are you going to do on that third day in a row where you've just used your entire bullpen up as much as possible? People have been in the game have been really trying to avoid back-to-back-to-back. So if you used Will Vest twice, like that's it.
Yeah, and the Tigers have functioned with much more of a traditional rotation so far this season, but they've built in bullpen days. They've kind of got creative in getting their guys an extra day of rest here and there. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but their bullpen days in the regular season have been wildly less successful than they were last year. For whatever reason, it just hasn't worked the same.
I think this bullpen's not as good as what.
Well, then, there you go.
Yeah, quality has gone down. I do think we started talking about the lineup up top. It's a top 10 lineup right now. They did not have that last year. By Wilba, they're 9th entering play on Tuesday. They are more dangerous. Some of that is guys like Torkelson and Greene. Some of it's Wensil Perez has been better than I could have expected so far. I mean, you look at that. You look at Gleyber Torres, one of the better one-year deals that anybody picked up over the offseason. So, like, how much do you trust this lineup to maintain its playoff caliber performance? Because that, to me, is a huge difference from last year. I know they mix and matched it effectively, and it seemed like every button AJ Hinch pressed down the stretch worked perfectly. I think their floor is a lot higher as a lineup just going into a postseason matchup this year than it was a season ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think the floor is a lot higher. I think we've seen too much of it now to be like, well, this team can't hit, because they clearly can. Now, they also ended the first half, I believe, 2nd in the American League in run scoring. And that always felt, I wasn't confident that they could sustain that. Is this more of a middle of the pack offense? I guess that'd probably be my worry. Or really my worry is just the profile, the strikeout to walk ratio. This is a lineup, especially you put it against some good pitching, can still whiff a ton, doesn't have a great propensity to walk. Like, what's that going to look like in the postseason? We've seen Javi Baez, who was a great story, really taper off pretty severely to better than the guy he was last year, but a well below average hitter recently. Zach McKinstry's continued to play well all year, but man, that's a lot of you're staking a lot on a guy who hasn't really been that player in his career until this year. You need Riley Greene as best. Kerry Carpenter is probably the name we haven't talked about yet. He just got back from the IL. He's been on the tear. The Tigers do feel like a different team with him in their order. That's a huge piece for them. Changes the way AJ Hinch manages the game. He's a legit left-handed power bat. I think it's a good offense. I don't know if it's a great offense. I guess my fear is they get killed by a nasty Mariners rotation or something in the postseason.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think there's like on any given night, with some of the up and down nature of some of these guys, like Colt Keith and Parker Meadows. Like Keith is on the season been great, but it's been up and down.
Yeah.
And Baez the same thing, and then Meadows is hurt now, but when he's been in, it hasn't been quite what it was last year. So I feel like on any given night, you do have like 3 holes in this lineup, and when there's slumping, it's more like 4 or 5, and when they're going great, it's more like 1 or 2. But there are holes in this lineup.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Meadows is a huge piece. He'll probably be back relatively soon. He had an 890 OPS in August and September or something like that. Maybe it was well over 800. Has not been that guy this year when healthy. Has had a broken season with injuries. Total difference maker for that team when he's right. We haven't seen him right all year. Matt Vierling, same thing. He's out. May miss the rest of the regular season. We will see. So a couple pieces that just never fully clicked.
And it could all come together, right? Like we're talking right now. We're right in the middle of one of the worst stretches of the year. What if, Parker comes back? What if Keith, finds it again? And then, Baez is your quote unquote hole in lineup, but he can always just take you deep randomly. He's kind of one of those. Sometimes it's good volatility with Baez where it's like nobody really game plans for him. We can get him out, but then whoops, he just hit an Oppo taco. So
sure,
I could see it sort of ironing itself out. The one concern for me that I don't see them necessarily ironing out is that pen. So.
Yeah,
you talk a little bit about Gleyber's year. I mean, he's been really important to this. I think he's been really steady all year, and what have you seen from him?
Yeah, I think he's been by far their most steady contributor. That's really the right word. One reason the Tigers wanted him, even though it meant shuffling around their roster a little bit this winter, was the consistent at bat, the consistent approach he gives you. We talked. This team doesn't walk a lot. Will Gleyber controls the strike zone, is able to draw his walks. He's done that as well as ever this year. I think he has the lowest chase rate of his career. He's just solid, man. And we haven't seen the super high power ceiling we saw from a young Gleyber Torres, but we've seen just a really good, consistent major league hitter. He has a plan. He sticks to it. I don't know that I have a lot more analysis beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Although the other thing I would point out, like Gleyber came with this reputation coming from New York, he's kind of lazy, he's a bad defender, he's a terrible base runner. Well, he still grades out well in the negative defensively, but just the eye test is better than I expected. It's not like he's botching routine plays on a nightly basis. The base running, the metrics don't love him, but look at extra bases taken. It's the best rate of his career. The Tigers love to take extra bases. I think that's rubbed off on Gleyber. I think some of the things the Tigers do systematically has helped kind of smooth out the edges around Gleyber Torres, and that's helped him have a really good year.
Yeah, he's on pace to put up, I think, his best WAR season ever. I mean, it's huge to have. And to control the strike zone, it's the mantra that the Tigers have had, at least having Torres there, has provided that stabilizing presence. Got one more question for you, Cody. I know Scott Harris doesn't believe in Windows or thinks that Windows are an illusion. The reality is they've got one more year of Tarek Skubal before Skubal gets a crack at free agency. And I think about this Tigers franchise a little bit differently now than 10 years ago. Before Mike Ilitch passed away, they were running top 5 payrolls. They were one of the more aggressive spending clubs in the game in pursuit of that World Series title. Do you get the sense that they're ever going to push to that level again, or even back into the top 10 in payroll, because I think something along those lines, at least in the top 10 range, is probably necessary if they were going to find a way to keep Tarek Skubal in the long term and to sustain long-term success in a division that is down right now and probably won't be down for very long.
Yeah, my sense has always been like I don't see the Tigers being a luxury tax team anytime soon. They're clearly willing to spend a little more than they are right now. They made a pretty competitive offer for Alex Bregman this winter, finished as the runners-up. I think they had some discussions with Skubal last winter. I'm not sure how serious they were. It's like this is the big existential issue around this team is like, what do you do with Skubal? Can you re-sign him? If you don't re-sign him, is there a world where they try to trade him this offseason, or do you just ride it out and try to win with him next year and happily accept a qualifying offer? That would almost mean like acknowledging a window, though, if you do it that way. So I don't know. I think they could offer him the moon. I'm not sure he would accept it. He's a Scott Boras client. I think Scott Boras is going to want to test free agency, want Tarek Skubal to set a record contract for pitchers and maybe up the floor for the rest of his guys in the process. So the Tigers can make a competitive offer. There's a chance they could still be bidding against the Yankees, the Dodgers, whoever else might emerge as willing to spend in another year. The CBA talks are all kind of looming in the backdrop of this, so we'll see what happens there. I think it's going to be tough for the Tigers to re-sign Skubal, and I don't even think that that's due to their own financial limitations. I think it's more of a Tarek Skubal. Tarek Skubal's the best pitcher in the world, and his agent is Scott Boras.
Yeah, and you go up against teams that have seemingly limitless pockets, at least deeper pockets than the Tigers have, and you get to the Mets, Yankees, Dodgers level, anything's possible in terms of number of years and number of dollars, but it's also the one time in Tarek Skubal's career where he gets to choose where home actually is too. And I think that might be a factor for him that people underrate as well. I mean, Corbin Burns chose Arizona. So, hey, anything's possible. You just never know. Cody, one more question for you. I think I said last question before, but I was just thinking about the system again. I asked Keith Law, I said, you ever have two guys in the same organization, 1-2 on your prospect list before? I said, no, that's never happened. So it's Kevin McConaughey and Max Clark atop the in-season update from Keith Law. I mean, what is it like covering this team now that they actually have a loaded system? Because it wasn't long ago the Tigers had a bottom end system and looked like a team that was going to be just sort of drifting for the next decade.
Yeah, I think that's important to keep in perspective. For as much as we joke about windows and Skubal and Scott Harris didn't do enough at the trade deadline and the team hasn't played that well over the last month or so, this organization's in a really healthy spot. It's actually kind of amazing how quickly they have gotten there in the Harris era. We'll see what happens. We'll see if these prospects pan out, but there's a clear direction. There is a system that has some top-end prospects that also has more depth than it did when Riley Greene and Spencer Torkelson were coming up. McGonigal, man, this guy can hit. Like, he is a pure hitter. Clark, I think there's a little more variability. Like, I think he's going to be good based on defense and base running alone. What type of hitter is he at the major league level? Maybe a little bit harder to know. How much power will he hit for? But a dynamic player. Corbin Carroll is probably the natural comp. Is he Corbin Carroll, or is he a lesser version of Corbin Carroll? And if you're a lesser version of Corbin Carroll, how good does your defense have to be? Like, these are some of the questions to keep in mind. But they have those two guys. Josue Bersinio is a first baseman with a lot of power, also a catcher too. I'm not sure he'll stick behind the plate. Tyron Lorenzo, switch hitting catcher, really intriguing prospect there. They have some arms. You'd probably like to see a little bit more pitching in this system. Thins out a little kind of quickly, but some good things happening on the farm. They've proven they're good at player development and kind of winning, helping guys improve on the margins too. That already has impacted their big league roster. So yeah, there's still some really good things happening in the land of the Tigers, despite also some really pressing concerns in terms of their immediate future.
Yeah, well, we're curious to see how it plays out for them down the stretch. And Cody, we appreciate your time and your insight today.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
If you got requests for a future checklist, a player that has slipped through the cracks throughout this season, drop that in the mailbag channel in our Discord.
We need like checklist.
We need one of those.
Did you make the checklist? Check. I don't know. We need like visuals.
You're making the production job so easy right now for Brian. Like he could have found those sound effects somewhere, and you just did them all in one take. 10 out of 10. No notes.
Check. The checklist.
Oh. All right. I think that's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. Thanks again to Cody Stavenhagen for joining us. Thanks to Brian Smith for putting this episode of nonsense together. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.